Oh, I know that sound. It's time for the Beer News Report. Hi, and welcome to the Beer News Report. Cheers. Today, I'm drinking Baltimore Blonde Beer by Guinness Open Gate Brewery. I'm not sure if it's related to the England Guinness Brewery, but this beer is light, crisp, has a hint of citrus. I like it. I think you should give it a try. Cheers. This show is going to look at the reasons why empires fell from the leading spot in the world. Specifically, I want to look at China, then the Middle East, then Europe, and then finally the US. And there's three main reasons why countries fall from the lead position. One is they get conquered. Two, they had a change in leadership. And three, they weaken their economy. In this day and age, conquering a country really isn't an option anymore, right? Because the developed countries have the nuclear bomb, and the undeveloped countries, well, we have the United Nations that are supposedly going to stop one country from invading another country. So for this show, I'm not going to talk about why the Roman Empire fell or why the Mongol Empire fell or any other empire. I want to stick to the reasons why the US might fall. And since the US is a superpower and has a nuclear bomb, the thought that we could be conquered is a distant thought. I want to focus on the effects that could make us slip now. Cheers. In the olden days, China and India were the two big economies. The main reason was the industry of the world was farming. And the rule of thumb for economies is this. In a world where everyone is equally productive, the country with the largest population will have the largest economy. And at that time, China and India held about 40% of the world's population. So thus, those two were the biggest economies. But China took it a step further. During the Ming Dynasty, their leader, who was Zhu Di, and he ordered that China have the biggest navy in the world. And not only the biggest navy, but the biggest ships in the world too. And who's going to lead this? Zheng He. What's so great about Zheng He? Well, when he was a boy, his father died, and he was taken captive. And then they castrated him and put him under the household services of Zhu Di. So when Zhu became emperor, he knew Zheng, and, he was with him since he was a little boy, and he was a trusted servant. So, you might want to call it luck, but, he was castrated. But you know what? Here's to you, Zheng. Cheers. Now, how big were these Chinese ships? This is a comparison between Zheng He's ship and Columbus's ship. You can barely see Columbus's ship. It's dwarfed by Zheng He's ship. Europe actually isn't going to make these kind of size ships until the 19th century. Now, between 1405 and 1433, Zheng commanded 7 voyages of trade and discovery. He traveled throughout South Asia and Southeast Asia, and also as far as Africa. And these voyages played 2 parts. One, it was to build trade with China, obviously. And then 2, it was kind of a soft power move, right? He's going out there saying, look how big our ships are. Look at the Navy I'm bringing with, because he went with a bunch of ships. Just want you to know that China's the power in the world, right? He would bring emissaries and envoys back with him, along with other goods and spices and animals and stuff. But they would go back to China and learn from China and pay respects to China. And on his 6th voyage, the Emperor Zhu Di had died. So a new emperor came on board, and he really wasn't too crazy about impressing the rest of the world with China's power. He basically said, you know what, we're the best, I don't care. And he started dismantling the Navy. And in fact, he made it a capital offense to build a ship that had more than 2 masts. So by 1525, there was an imperial edict ordering the destruction of all ocean-going ships. And just for reference, the Ming Navy was about 3,500 ships. It was huge. As the Chinese Empire focused pretty much on themselves and left the rest of the world to their own, well, they all caught up, right? And actually overtook them. But it isn't only politics that can take down an empire. Now, if we look at the Middle East and its various empires, we see that there's a different force that took them down. Religion. Cheers. Now, even before China, the Middle East was actually the birthplace of civilization, an area called the Fertile Crescent. This is where everything started. I know they say that we started in Africa, and we did, but we migrated north, and it was the Fertile Crescent that allowed us to build cities and learn how to do agriculture. And the Middle East, they virtually did everything, right? They started science and technology. They gave us writing and literature, obviously religion. agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, astrology, domestication of animals, long-distance trade, medical practices, including dentistry, the wheel, and the concept of time. All these things the Middle East gave us. For instance, you may have heard of the Hammurabi Code. These were the first laws of government and what to do if someone commits a crime. Hammurabi was the king of Babylon, and he actually expanded the kingdom to conquer all of Mesopotamia. Another example, for instance, your computers. Everything on a computer is done by algorithms nowadays, but who invented algorithms? Well, it's from the Middle East. His name was Muhammad bin Musa al-Khwarizmi. Around 1820 CE, he was appointed as the astronomer and head of the library of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. He was a Persian polymath who produced vastly influential works in mathematics, astronomy, and geography. Now, I need to point out something here. I said religion was the downfall of the Middle East, but I don't mean that Islam is against science. Sure, there are sects of fundamentalists in Islam that are against science and, want to live by the old ways. We have that in Christianity too. Just go visit an Amish country. You'll be like, what planet am I on? Right? Cheers. The reason I'm blaming religion for the Middle East downfall is because Islam attracted the Christian crusades from Europe. All those crusades, all those wars, they weakened the Middle East so much that by the time the Mongols invaded, they were too weak to defend themselves. And Baghdad was actually put to the torch in 1258. Priceless amounts of books and manuscripts are lost. Again, this gave the European powers a chance to catch up and pass them in technology. So with China gone and the Middle East gone, Europe was the only power left standing. Now, the Europeans had a plan. They knew that to keep their economies growing, they needed to control trade around the world. So what they did was they started conquering countries and islands. And so what they first did is they went into Africa. The Africans didn't have the technology that the Europeans did, so it was an easy steal. And they also took all the islands in the sea. So you could go from Europe to Africa to the Middle East to Asia, going through the Indian Ocean, and they had ports all along the way. So they always had a defensible position. Again, what this did, anybody who tried to interrupt their trade, they got destroyed. They could attack at any time. So that's why Africa fell, that's why India fell, and eventually China. So they started going west, and then they hit the Americas, right? The same thing happened. The indigenous people of the Americas, they didn't have any technology compared to the Europeans. So they just went in, started wiping out. Plus, the Europeans had a bunch of new diseases that they weren't used to. So actually, the diseases killed more people than the wars did. But at its peak, the British Empire had colonies on every continent. So what's next? Well, when there's no place else to conquer, you look to your neighbors for expansion, and now world wars broke out. And this brings us to a third reason why empires fall: weakened economies. Cheers. Within 40 years, there were 2 world wars. Europe was devastated. Its manufacturing was gone, there was a huge debt, and a huge part of the labor force was killed. What happened? Well, that left the U.S. as the last standing world power. And I know Russia is considered a superpower at that time, and there was a Cold War between the U.S. and Russia. But in terms of technology, the U.S. was way ahead of Russia. Now, the U.S. pulled the same playbook as the Europeans did, right? They went around the world, and they started building ports everywhere, and military bases in all sorts of countries. And they also took it one step further. And the way they did this is they had a big meeting in Bretton Woods. And now this is a resort in New Hampshire, and the U.S. invited all the heads of the European countries, and they made an agreement. If the European allies, if they allied with the United States would provide them protection and allow free trade. Now, Europe was in no shape to bargain, so they agreed. And we all know what happened next, right? Europe flourished, their economies grew back, now they're better than ever. Good job. Cheers. Now, in 1992, the Maastricht Treaty created the European Union, we'll call it the EU, and then in 1999, the euro was made as the official currency of the EU. So any countries in the EU changed their currency to the euro. And the reason why Europe was doing this is they're trying to mimic the United States. They saw that all the states were working together to keep the union strong. And they're like, why don't we do that? Now, how did the United States do this? Well, just like most countries, the U.S. has a central bank that makes money. That's its job, to print or mint money. It can make as much as it wants, and then it distributes it to all the banks, and the banks send it out to the people, right? Now, I know what you're thinking. The U.S. can't print as much money as it wants. I mean, look what's happening to Greece and Italy and Spain. These countries overspend, and now they have a major debt crisis on hand. That's true, but here's the thing with Greece, Italy, and Spain. When they joined the EU, they became something similar to a state in the United States. meaning that they can no longer print as much money as they want. None of the states in the US can print money. It's only the federal government. I think the main reason why the UK left the EU was because they wanted to be a sovereign nation and have the ability to print their own money. I mean, it makes sense to me, right? Cheers. Now, there's limits to how much money you can print, because if you print too much, then inflation takes over and the value of your money decreases. So we have to figure out what drives inflation. It's a hot economy with full employment. Once the businesses are growing and they can't find workers, they will pay more, which increases wages. That increase goes to the cost of manufacturing, and thus prices for products go up. For example, in the 1990s, Bill Clinton was the president, and he wanted to pay off the national debt. By controlling spending and taxes, he was able to do this, but the economy was growing by leaps and bounds, which drove inflation up. You remember that time? Because I do, and we were getting paid stupid money. Now, what's stupid money? That's when you make so much money that you do something stupid. Like, we'd go out to a bar, and Uber wasn't around, so if you didn't want to drive, you had to get a taxi. Now, getting a taxi is not stupid, right? That would be a smart thing to do. But no, me and my friends, we decided we didn't want a taxi. We wanted a limousine because we thought we were rich. Now, looking back, I just shake my head saying, oh my God, I spent so much money for really no reason at all. I was such an idiot. I'm sure it won't be the last time I do something stupid. Cheers. Okay, but getting back to President Clinton and him paying off the national debt, now that's proof that the federal government doesn't have to print more money to make inflation go up. Clinton did just the opposite. He was paying off debt, which means he was reducing spending, and inflation still went up. So what about this $1.9 trillion stimulus package that President Biden just approved? Surely $1.9 trillion is too much money. Well, maybe. Nobody really knows what the limit is to government spending. So what you do is you look at the unemployment rate. If the unemployment rate is high, which it currently is, then you can spend as much as you want. But once the unemployment rate comes down to full employment, which is around 5%, then you got to stop your spending, because that's when inflation starts to tick up. So we thought. It actually got down to 3% during the Obama-Trump era, and inflation still didn't go up. So that's why President Biden is spending so much. You remember that $800 billion stimulus package that President Obama did, which is now considered too small? Well, that's why the economy recovered so slowly. Now, President Biden said, I'm not going to make that mistake twice, and that's why he made a really big stimulus package. All right, Biden, way to go. Cheers. So why is China catching up to our economy? We're doing nothing wrong. Well, it gets back to that rule of thumb I talked about at the beginning of the show. Again, in a world where everyone is equally productive, the country with the largest population will have the largest economy. China is focusing on improving its technology, and it's getting closer and closer to being on par with the United States. China has 4 times our population, so technically it should have 4 times our economy. Well, what about India? India is also improving its technology, but it's not doing it as fast as China. But India has another trick up its sleeve. The Chinese population is actually decreasing. They're starting to age out. The whole one-child policy is kind of biting them in the butt. The Indian population is increasing. Now, India should be the most populous country before the end of the century. Actually, probably before 2150. When that happens, and if they can catch up with China in technology, they should have the world's biggest economy. Now, this all assumes that no wars will break out and there's no nuclear bombs dropped anywhere. Obviously, if that happens, all bets are off, right? Yeah, cheers. Well, you can see my beer is almost empty. So that means we're at the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to contact me, use that email address. If you want to like the show, please click that like button. And of course, if you want to get notified when a new show appears, click on that subscription button and the little bell icon next to it. And when you do, when I post a new show, you'll get notification. But until then, keep your beer cold and your interest hot. Cheers.